And then Jennifer said the two most compassionate words I think any human being can say to another. I'm here. I'm here. Now, I didn't even know where here was, other than some anonymous name like Barnes Hospital, but I knew that in this world of pain and terror and darkness, that I wasn't alone. And that's what I needed, simple human presence to let me know that I wasn't alone. I think we all have that need, don't we? When things are really bad, we reach out for somebody else, right? I've been telling this story for years, talking to healthcare employees, healthcare professionals, colleges and universities, talking to them about how important those two words were to me. And I always get the question, Marcus, tell us some more about Jennifer. I can't. Because all I ever knew of Jennifer was that she was 20 years old. She was in the ER. I didn't know what position she had. I didn't know her last name. I had no way of looking her up. 2 weeks ago, I met Jennifer. So after one of my morning presentations here at Barnes Jewish, and Carol Scott from the patient experience team comes up to me and she says, Marcus, we've got a surprise for you. We found Jennifer. And for the first time in nearly 20 years, I got to say that. It took that long. Jennifer was a 20-year-old patient care tech. Now, we all admit that there's a certain hierarchy in healthcare, right? Let's talk about a 20-year-old patient care tech and how high they are on that scale. Not very, right? I mean, at 20 years old, you don't have decades of experience, correct? You don't have, 10 years worth of higher education behind your name, and all kinds of certifications and designations and registrations, et cetera, right? What Jennifer had was an innate knowledge that what I needed more than anything was that simple human presence, those two words, I'm here. As I found out later, Jennifer is probably better known around here as Jenny Acob. She is the nurse manager on 4400 in the U.S. ICU. Again, it's one of those special moments of my life to be able to come back and say thank you for being there for me when I didn't know which way was up. Now, I woke up the next morning, I couldn't see, I couldn't hear, I could hear, but everything I heard sounded like I was deep underwater. I couldn't smell, I couldn't taste, and the only thing I could feel was this pressure from my head to my toes. It felt like somebody had taken a loaded dump truck and dropped it on my body from about 10 stories high. Now, if you wake up tomorrow morning void of your five senses, would you have some questions? Such as? What happened? Exactly. Well, here's the deal. By the time I arrived at the ER that night, my face and head were so swollen from all the broken bones in my face that the paramedics had to rip an emergency tracheostomy into my throat in the field. That trach meant that for the next 3 weeks, I could not speak. So how do you communicate when you can't speak? You can't. I think there's a few things. Somebody always says sign language. Well, that would work if I actually knew sign language. So anyway, writing was the next thing that came to mind. And maybe it was because I was as helpless as a child at this moment, or maybe it was because I was stoned out of my mind on narcotics. But I start thinking like a child. I start remembering back to childhood things, and I think about Sesame Street and how Kermit the Frog used to take his magic pointy finger and he would draw with it. You remember that? He'd draw ABCs on the screen. Well, I am taking my magic pointy finger and drawing out words and letters, asking, who are you, where am I, drawing these on my bed sheets. And it takes me 18 years to figure out that I do not have a magic pointy finger. So finally, one of my nurses says, Marcus, I know you're trying to talk to me, but I don't know what you're saying. So I'm going to ask you yes or no questions. And if you want to answer yes to a question, hold up one finger. And if you want to answer no to a question, hold up two fingers. So she would come into my room and say, Marcus, do you want me to give you a shot for pain? Yes. She might come back a little later and say, Marcus, do you want me to lower the back of your bed so you'll be more comfortable? And I go, with 2 fingers. No, okay. Now, folks, I've got to tell you, at this point in time, the drugs don't touch the pain. The position of the bed doesn't take away the pain. The only thing that stops the hurt at all is if I lay absolutely motionless. Yet, if somebody would come along and just bump the side of my bed, it would shoot off lightning bolts of pain. And when that would happen, my head would involuntarily roll to one side or the other. And as gross as this is, I could actually feel and hear fluid sloshing around the back of my head. Then some doctor comes into my room, and it is his job to examine me. And he didn't get the memo. So this dude comes in, lays across the side of my bed, my body flops over this side. I am taking my fist and pounding it into the mattress, trying to get him to stop. And the man has the audacity to look up and say, oh, did that hurt? So I held up one finger to show him how much it hurt. You're on traffic, if you're in traffic on 40 tonight, you'll be able to communicate just like I am. Now, that's still not so much. Now I can say 3 things, right? So that's still not so much. So the person who got me talking for the first time was my aunt. My aunt was an operating room nurse in Chicago, at Cook County Hospital in Chicago. And knowing that I had heard, actually, Elaine started her career here at Barnes in the OR back in the 70s. So whenever she came to St. Louis, she brought along several of those big yellow legal tablets and pens and pencils, thinking I could write out my answers. Gave me a pencil. She said, can you write your name? So I wrote my name. She said, okay, Marcus, do you know where you are? Hospital? I threw a question mark again because I wasn't totally sure. She said, yes, you're in the hospital. Do you know why you're here? Car accident? Again, with question marks. I wasn't 100% sure. She said, yes, you were in a car accident Saturday night. You and Tom and Kim and Vince were going home after the hockey game. And you guys got broadsided by another car at the intersection of Hampton and Chippewa. And there were 3 people in the other car that hit you. Were the people in the other car drunk? She said, yes, they were. Does that matter? I think, yes, it would have mattered on a normal day, but this was no normal day. The only thing I wanted was to stop hurting. And that piece of information that this was all this pain and terror and blackness was caused by one person's irresponsible choice took a back seat to the pain. And yet she said something in her answer that triggered my mind for me. She said, you and Tom and Kim and Vince will go home after the game. And I had no idea where my 3 friends were.